Long ago, humans were ruled by gods and monsters, but the demigod Perseus managed to defeat the Kraken and save humanity. Even after the death of his wife, he refused to pray to the gods for help, choosing instead to live as a simple fisherman with his son, Helios. Their peaceful existence was short-lived, however, as his father, Zeus, visited them one night bearing grim news. It seemed the gods were losing their power because humanity had stopped praying, and they could no longer contain the demons within the gates of Tartarus. This threatened the release of the massive titan, Kronos, the father of all gods. Zeus asked Perseus for help to prevent this disaster, but Perseus declined, believing he had no power to offer. Left with no other choice, Zeus set out with his brother Poseidon and his son Ares toward the gates of Tartarus to repair its walls. There, they encountered Hades, who still harbored a deep grudge against them for banishing him to the Underworld. Hades then unleashed demons upon the gods, hurling fireballs that sent everyone flying. Zeus and Poseidon tried to fight back, but their weakened states left them overwhelmed, and Poseidon was soon incapacitated by the fierce assault. The situation worsened when Ares betrayed his father, striking Zeus repeatedly until he was unconscious. Ares then seized the thunderbolt, and a surge of energy made him even more powerful. Simultaneously, a horde of demons emerged from the mountains and began flying toward the human settlements. Perseus spotted a fireball hurtling toward his village and immediately gave chase. The massive object crashed into the buildings, drawing a crowd of curious villagers to the crater. Before long, a vicious monster began attacking the crowd with its tail before erupting from the ground and causing widespread destruction. As the creature struck down the villagers, Perseus was the only one running toward the danger to find his son. The beast soon confronted him, spewing flames in every direction. Perseus managed to leap onto the creature's head, stabbing it repeatedly until he was eventually thrown off. The monster charged and knocked him aside, eventually dragging him across the field. Using metal chains, Perseus managed to ensnare the monster and began pulling its heads apart. He then tricked the beast into igniting itself, finally ending the fight as the monster was consumed by its own fire. Though Perseus was injured, he was relieved to find that Helios had survived. He immediately took the boy to a temple to pray to Zeus for help, only to find the sanctuary ransacked and the statues shattered. They eventually found a surviving statue of Zeus to pray to, which summoned a shadow that turned out to be Poseidon, who had escaped the ambush. The deity was clearly dying, however, as he informed Perseus of what had happened to Zeus. Poseidon urged Perseus to find his son, Agenor, who was currently with Queen Andromeda. He explained that Agenor could lead them to the fallen god Hephaestus, who held the key to defeating Kronos, before he dissolved into dust, leaving only his trident behind. Meanwhile, Ares held Zeus captive, venting his hatred over the favoritism Zeus had always shown toward Perseus. Hades mocked his brother's situation and revealed his plan to sacrifice Zeus to their father, Kronos. He brought Zeus to the heart of Tartarus, where the massive body of Kronos lay dormant. They chained the god and began siphoning his power, converting the energy into lava to fuel the Kronos. Hades believed Kronos would grant them immortality in exchange for his freedom, but Zeus laughed at his brother's gullibility, warning him that the Kronos would spare no one. Elsewhere, Perseus donned his armor once more and said goodbye to his son before flying on Pegasus to meet Queen Andromeda. As Pegasus carried him across the sky, he spotted the gathering armies and landed directly before them. After many years, he reunited with the queen and explained the cause of the disaster, suggesting they recruit the demigod Agenor. They went to the prison cells where Agenor was being held. Perseus told Agenor that Hades had killed his father and offered him a chance for revenge if he guided them to Hephaestus. Perseus convinced his cousin to join them, and they immediately set off for a mysterious island that only Agenor could find using the trident. Soon, the massive landmass appeared, and they arrived at a place filled with towering trees. Perseus soon realized they were in trouble when massive traps were triggered and Agenor was snatched away. Before they could rescue him, a tree was hurled at Perseus, and he was shocked to see giants emerging before him. Perseus attempted to lure the creature away from the group, but before the soldiers could strike, a second giant appeared behind them. The soldiers attacked with arrows, but this only enraged the giant, who swatted the warriors aside. Meanwhile, Perseus continued to evade the massive giant as it tore through the forest, destroying everything in its path. Perseus eventually reached a cliff and discovered a trap that the giants themselves had set. As the giant charged to crush him, Perseus stabbed its hand, causing the creature to howl in pain. The soldiers tried to restrain the monster, but it struggled violently and threw Perseus to the ground. Although the monster broke free, Perseus managed to spring the trap, which sent a tree trunk into the giant's head and knocked it unconscious. He approached his fallen foe in victory, but another giant charged in to save its comrade, forcing Perseus back into the fight. Fortunately, an elder giant appeared to stop the battle, bowing to the humans once he saw Perseus wielding the trident. The giants led them to their destination, finally arriving at the structure where the fallen god Hephaestus lived. The warriors entered cautiously and were surprised that Hephaestus recognized them immediately. The old man was the one who had forged all the gods' weapons, and he revealed that the only way to defeat Kronos was to combine the 3 legendary relics of the deities, making the Spear of Triam. To get the remaining items, they had to venture into the heart of Tartarus, which required navigating a labyrinth Hephaestus had designed. They set off for the infamous maze and eventually reached a massive structure that spun toward the center of the earth. They boarded the structure but were soon caught in an explosion as a projectile landed in front of them, knocking everyone back. Ares had discovered their location because a soldier had prayed to him, and he proceeded to easily defeat the warriors. Luckily, Hephaestus managed to open the entrance to the labyrinth and rushed to hold off Ares, sacrificing his life so the others could escape. Once inside, they realized how complex the paths were and had no choice but to push forward into the unknown. After hours of navigating the puzzle, they realized the walls were beginning to shift and close in on them. They fled as the structure seemingly came to life, crushing everything in its path. Perseus was separated from the group, falling deeper into the heart of the structure. He pressed on, eventually reuniting with his friends at the very entrance of Tartarus. Meanwhile, Kronos had finished siphoning Zeus's energy, causing the great Titan to wake. Seeing the Titan's true power, Hades began to regret his choice, just as he heard Zeus calling out to him. Zeus apologized for banishing Hades and begged him to do what was right, but before Hades could act, Ares attacked him from behind and knocked him down. Hades recovered and fought back, eventually sending both himself and Ares tumbling into the abyss. Fortunately, Perseus arrived at that moment and found his father. Using a god's weapon, he freed Zeus, but Ares reappeared and unleashed a shockwave that blew the heroes back. Before Ares could deliver a killing blow, Hades intervened to hold him off, giving the others a chance to flee. However, the god of war managed to hurl a weapon that struck Zeus. As Tartarus crumbled and Kronos broke free, Zeus grabbed the divine weapons and struck them together, creating an explosion that teleported them to safety. They brought Zeus to the army base, where he told Perseus that he must retrieve the lightning bolt from Ares to form the Spear of Triam and stop Kronos. Left with no other choice, Perseus prayed to Ares, challenging him to a duel at the Temple of Zeus. Perseus said his goodbyes and took to the sky on Pegasus while the soldiers cheered for him. Soon, a distant mountain exploded, sending a shockwave over the army and hurling fireballs full of demons onto the battlefield. The monsters charged the army, and though the soldiers fought bravely, the mortals were no match for the hellish demons and were quickly cut down. Meanwhile, Perseus reached the temple, only to find that Ares had taken Helios hostage to force the boy to watch his father's demise. Perseus charged, but Ares quickly overpowered him and threw him to the floor. Ares continued his assault while Helios watched helplessly, as Perseus was slammed into the temple pillars. Just as Ares prepared the final strike, he saw Helios standing up to him, which only enraged the god further. This distraction gave Perseus the opening to tackle Ares. He seized a weapon and stabbed his brother, causing Ares to dissolve into dust. Perseus then took the 3 divine weapons and combined them into the glowing Spear of Triam. Meanwhile, Hades appeared before Zeus to apologize for his betrayal, sharing his remaining power to revive his brother. They joined the battle and began clearing out the demons with their magic, carving a path toward Kronos. Kronos finally emerged from the mountains with a roar, but Zeus attacked first, unleashing all his energy in a series of massive explosions. This only served to irritate the Titan, who struck the nearby mountains and leveled everything in sight. Fortunately, Perseus arrived on the battlefield with the magical spear, intent on ending Kronos. Kronos spotted him and hurled lava his way, forcing Perseus to dodge in midair while the flames incinerated the ground below. Seeing his son in danger, Zeus and Hades combined their power for one final strike that knocked the Titan back, allowing Perseus to fly even closer. In a rage, Kronos slammed his fist into the earth, and Zeus tried to shield his brother from the resulting blast. The Titan's power was too much, however, and the blast broke through the barrier, sending Zeus flying. Perseus flew straight toward Kronos' face, charging the spear of Triam as he dove through the flames and into the Titan's mouth. He struck the creature with the spear and hurled it deep into the monster's core. Kronos let out an agonizing scream and began to erupt from within, creating a massive explosion that filled the sky as the soldiers cheered. Once the dust settled, Perseus found his father and Hades, only to see that Zeus had been mortally wounded. He approached his father, fighting back tears, as Zeus thanked him for his heroism before finally dissolving into dust. Sometime later, Perseus returned to his son and gave him his weapon, telling him to always remember the god's sacrifice and to never forget his own heritage.
Please like and subscribe.